Hello, and welcome to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. I'm Erin DeVos, and I'll be your host for this season. Join us for insightful interviews that explore the work of up-and-coming independent filmmakers from all over the world. If you're passionate about film and keen to learning about the creative process from the future cinema greats, this podcast is a must-listen for you. Our mission is to provide listeners with the engaging and informative conversations about successful and innovative films, including features, shorts, documentaries, animation, and web series from across the globe. The DCIFF Film Chat Podcast is a unique opportunity for independent filmmakers to have their voices heard in a way no other film festival can provide. You can listen to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast on all podcast platforms or visit our website at DCIFF-indie.org/DCIFF-podcast. Thank you. Hey, Film Chat fans, and welcome to another episode of the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Erin DeVos, and this week I am introducing you to Patrick Michael. He is the director of Black Silk, and that was one of the films featured in our short form program at the DCIFF 2024, and he was actually the first interview that I had the privilege of meeting with, well, the first filmmaker, I should say, to meet with. And he is truly aspiring to look up to. And one thing that I just wanted to share is that I admire Patrick in our conversation as he continues to mine for inspiration in both his past, present, auto-fictional storytelling and allows for the exploration of what is, what was, and in the pursuit of unearthing what can be. And we had an amazing conversation, though it may feel short as a podcast episode, but I feel there's a lot you can truly gain from our conversation. And let's dive in. Welcome, Patrick, to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. I'm really excited to have you as our first guest here. And we just started getting underway only last night with our opening film, but Patrick Michael's film, Black Silk, will be premiering in the Shorts program on Sunday during the DCIFF 2024. So I want to welcome you again.
Thanks, Erin. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, so first I wanted to start off with having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your nominated film, Black Silk.
Sure. So my name is Patrick Michael, as you said. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I'm based out of LA now. Went to USC grad film school, and since then have started a film production company called Peace, Love, Dope Films, where our aim is to center stories around underprivileged communities and telling those stories through sort of groundbreaking visualization. Since then, we made a film called Black Silk, and it's based on true events from my own life. So it's sort of auto-fictional. And it's about a young, timid Black boy who is sort of feeling unmoored and disconnected, which I think we all are around his age in our lives. And he has a single mother who's not really sort of understanding what her son is going through. She feels sort of lost in guiding him in his life. And she decides one day maybe he should meet his father for the first time. And though trepidatious, he also agrees. And the film is about sort of that first day of them meeting each other, him and his father. And his father's name is Silk. So things go pretty well at first. The son is sort of feeling that connection that's been missing. And then there's a turn in the film. There's sort of this violent revelation that shifts his perspective. And the son has to decide, is this actually a home for me? Do I need to change to belong here? Is this a sign that I should be going in a different direction? And the film sort of explores that thought process and its outcomes.
Wow, that's awesome. And to be able to know that it's connected to your own personal experience.
It is. Yeah. It's largely based on when I met my father for the first time and the circumstances sort of surrounding that introduction, which is its own story. But it's also fed by, stories of people that I grew up with, people that are also in my family. And, I was fortunate enough where I was that boy who was, sort of waiting around for a positive male role model, essentially. I had that longing that the character also has.
Mhm.
But I was fortunate to have very strong women in my family who were just the most benevolent guidance possible. But there are people in my community and in my family who didn't have that and went in a different direction. And the story is sort of like highlighting that fork in the road for people in that position.
Mhm. Definitely. And I feel, yeah, many people can really resonate with your film and especially going through that. And through the experience and through the film, what would you say would you want the audience to be like the key message or takeaway?
That's a great question. I would say I think it's easy to look at a story like this and look at some of the characters and just think that certain people are just bad people.
Mhm.
And the point of the film is to show that every character's decision made throughout the course of the film is made with a positive end goal in mind. And it's just a depiction of how people go about achieving what they think are, again, benevolent goals. And so even though some characters do things that I think are malignant or have a harmful effect on people, or perhaps there's a disregard for the feelings of other people, those actions are always coming from a place of how can I help my family? How can I gain better position to help those around me? So it's almost never selfish, but some of the behavior appears to be selfish on the outside. So I think it's just about finding nuance and complexity in characters that I think can sometimes be written off as one note or caricatures.
Definitely. That's a great answer and response. And it made me also think, knowing the difference within independent film, like how much like we want to show these stories of overcoming. How do you feel would be either like a challenge within the industry?
That's a good question too. I think sometimes it can be easy to want to create or live in sort of a utopic take on things of like where things can and will be one day.
Mhm.
And I think it's wonderful to have that part of the spectrum for these kinds of films. And I think films like these and films that I have interest in making in the future sort of fit in a different place on the spectrum where it's more about humanizing the experience that people have. And it's less about how can we take a macro perspective on what's going on and shift it into a better place, and more about how can we look at the micro choices that these characters are making in their communities and see that it's not necessarily it doesn't have to be perceived through a lens sort of sociological position. It could just be on a human level of like how does his father care for his son, and that is obviously mitigated by his circumstances. But the story is not about the circumstances themselves. It's about this father and this son.
Mhm.
And I think if we have more options like that to look at human behavior, we can then feel more connected to them. And I think that's also a way that we can spark change instead of just looking at sort of a larger issue at hand.
Mhm. Definitely, yeah. Especially with, some, or I feel like some films that have been out today kind of like, recreate old stories,
Mm,
whereas like your story is so unique to the fact that it exploring like a relationship that is in a way like we're can be fearful of, but at the same time like takes us out of our comfort zone. So I
sure.
really thought that was really well done.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. And it is easy, I think, to also feel the pressure of like you want to tell something novel that hasn't been done before. So if you feel like part of your life has been told in a movie before, there can be sort of this self impetus to be like, I should pivot and do something that's like way different. And I think, again, there is space for that, but I also think we shouldn't be afraid to. There's room for everyone, I guess is the way to say it best. And I think just because you feel like your story has been told to a certain degree, maybe you feel like people are sick of the kind of story that you want to tell, even though it's your life. I think if you are confident in your vision, you have a particular perspective, and it's not just factual or empirical, and you do have some sort of emotional through line that you want to communicate to people. I mean, there are only, 7 stories to tell in film, period. So, like, of course, there's going to be some overlap, but if you have something unique about yourself and your voice is special, I think do what you want to do.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid.
Definitely. And that was I feel a great answer in response to the next question of talking about your nonprofit and
Mm.
how did that inspire you to create this film or vice versa? Which came first?
That's a tricky question because a lot of the things actually were born sort of towards the end of my tenure at USC in grad school. And then, of course, COVID happened in my last year. And a lot of plans that were going to be down the road, I think, got fast forwarded because we just had so much time on our hands. So I wasn't even thinking about doing the production company until after. But with the slowdown and having a chance to think about my thesis film, which this film was originally going to be at USC, thinking about how difficult it would be to make in that moment, like with COVID restrictions and, being safe, of course, it was more like, okay, well, how can we take the long view, maybe do this post grad? How does this fit into what the production company is going to be one day? And they just sort of folded into each other really naturally. So I was grateful for that opportunity. And also the slowdown I got a chance to write the feature film version of the story. And through the process of that also helped me determine what does the short film version of it look like in a more well-rounded way. So I'm actually very thankful that the thesis version did not get made. I think it was a little more grandiose and I think didn't focus enough on sort of these micro character decisions that I think are the best parts of the film now. And then I got to transpose those into the feature and I think enrich that simultaneously. So it was sort of a blessing in disguise.
Oh, cool. Well, I was just gonna ask you, like, if you're planning on making it into a bigger feature or doing like a series. Do you have other
Yes.
ongoing projects too?
Yeah, all of the above. Naturally. I will say that one of my favorite reactions to people watching the film is they say, what happens next? Or I wish it were longer. What happens in X, Y, and Z situation? I don't want to spoil anything, but, and that's so lovely to hear because it means that it's a character that people care about and they want to know the outcomes and that there is something to this world that people want to see more of. Thank God, because I already wrote it. So there is a plan to develop that further, but there are always pots on the stove. I mean, there are so many things that I want to do that are outside of the story. I should also say this story itself has been in development because it was a thesis for, oh man, maybe 3+ years in different iterations. I even told some short stories about characters that ended up in this movie in earlier films, just in different contexts. So all that stuff sort of have led up to this particular moment, which will then lead up to the feature moment later. So these characters have been on my mind for a very long time. So there are lots of things in the hopper that are very different about different kinds of characters that I've had time to think about over that whole time period that I'm very excited to dig into.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it sounds like, a whole web of opportunities that are just, keep branching out.
It
So
does,
that's really
yeah.
cool.
Yes. In the meantime, we're in the Silk multiverse, which is very exciting.
Love that. Well, Patrick, it's been awesome being able to chat with you today. And how can we, find you, follow you on your journey and your production company?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate that. You can find me online at A Beautiful Giant on Instagram. That's A Beautiful Giant. You can follow the production company at PLD_films on Instagram. You can also find us on our website at peacelovedope.com.
Sweet. All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate you.
Oh, wow. That was shorter than I thought. That was like all the questions, but you did it so. This podcast is brought to you by the DCIFF supporters. We could not be here without all of you to be sharing this amazing outlet with filmmakers from around the world. If you are interested in supporting DCIFF, head on over to our website through the link description in the bio of this episode, or you can go right to the website, which is DCIFF-INDIE.org, to connect with us and learn more about our Future of Film programs, our festival, and also more educational opportunities in what we do with our high school students, community, and beyond. We look forward to your support.